The blast tore through the diplomatic transport's hull 3 seconds before Captain Marcus Chen could reach the emergency override. Metal shrieked. Atmosphere vented in a hissing roar. Through the chaos, he saw Princess Alara stumbling backward, her 4-year-old daughter Sienna clutching her chest as purple emergency lights strobed across their faces. The child's scream cut through the decompression alarms. Chen's training took over. He crossed the cabin in 2 strides, wrapped both arms around the small body, and twisted his back toward the rupture. Something hot and sharp punched through his left shoulder blade. Pain exploded white behind his eyes, but his grip never loosened. The child's face pressed against his chest armor, her breath quick and warm against the tactical weave. "Marcus!" Alara's voice carried over the noise, sharp with command and terror. Couldn't. Every ounce of concentration focused on keeping Sienna's body between himself and anything solid, his own frame absorbing the debris still rocketing through the cabin. A jagged piece of hull plating grazed his calf. Blood spread warm beneath his uniform. The ship lurched violently to starboard. The Zetari patrol cruiser loomed in the viewport, its crystalline hull reflecting the transport's distress lights. Chen had seen their ships before, elegant and deadly, but never this close, never with weapons ports still glowing from recent discharge. The attack made no sense. Humanity and Zetari sovereignty had maintained peaceful relations for 6 years. This diplomatic mission was supposed to celebrate that alliance. "Sienna, are you hurt?" Chen's voice came out steady despite the blood soaking through his uniform. The child shook her head against his chest, trembling but whole. He didn't move until the emergency bulkhead slammed shut, sealing the breach. The cabin pressure stabilized. His ears popped. Princess Alara knelt beside them, her ceremonial robes torn, a cut bleeding above her left eye. "Let me see her." His left arm hung useless, nerve damage radiating from the shoulder wound. Sienna launched herself at her mother, small hands fisting in the torn silk. Alara held her daughter close, but her eyes stayed on Chen's face, searching. "You're injured." Not a question. "Operational." The lie tasted metallic. Blood pooled beneath his boots. The communications panel crackled to life. A voice spoke in crystalline harmonics, the universal translator rendering it smooth and cold. "Human transport. You have violated sovereignty space. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in immediate execution." Chen's good hand moved to his sidearm. Alara's fingers closed over his wrist. "Stand down, Captain." "That's an order. Princess, they fired on a diplomatic vessel without provocation. This is... Sienna lives because of you. I need you alive to ensure she stays that way." The viewport filled with the Zetari cruiser as it matched their crippled trajectory. Boarding clamps engaged with hollow thuds that echoed through the hole. Chen positioned himself between the airlock and the princess, weapon drawn despite her order, despite the blood loss making his vision narrow at the edges. The door cycled open. Zetari soldiers flowed through like liquid crystal, their forms humanoid but wrong, refracted and multifaceted. Each carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. They moved with absolute precision, spreading through the cabin in a pattern Chen recognized as tactical containment. Their commander stepped forward, taller than the rest, her crystalline form shot through with veins of deep violet. When she spoke, every surface in the cabin resonated with the sound. "Princess Alara of House Meridian, you will come with us." Under what authority? Alara remained kneeling, one arm around Sienna, the other resting on Chen's shoulder. The gesture appeared casual, but he felt the pressure, the silent command to hold position. "The authority of Queen Valkyra, sovereign of the Crystal Throne. You have entered restricted space. Your presence here constitutes an act of espionage. We were cleared by your own navigation authority. I have the codes. You were notified." Chen's jaw tightened. He'd monitored all communications personally. No such notification had been received. This was a trap, carefully constructed, but for what purpose he couldn't yet determine. Alara stood slowly, pulling Sienna up with her. The child remained silent, her face hidden against her mother's side. "Then we will accompany you peacefully and resolve this misunderstanding through proper diplomatic channels." The Zetari commander's form shifted slightly, a ripple of light that Chen's tactical training identified as amusement. "The Queen does not engage in diplomacy with spies. You will face judgment, as will your companions." Chen felt Sienna's small hand grip his injured arm. The pain flared bright, but he didn't flinch. The child was looking up at him, her eyes wide and dark, and in that moment he saw not fear, but trust. Absolute, unearned trust. The commander gestured. Two soldiers moved forward, reaching for the princess. Chen's weapon came up smooth and level despite his injury, targeting the nearest soldier's central mass. Touch her and this becomes a different kind of situation. Every Exetari weapon trained on Chen's position. The commander tilted her head, light bending strangely across her features. You would die for them, human? Already did once today? Chen's finger rested light on the trigger. Happy to make it permanent if you insist. The Zepthahari commander studied him for 3 long seconds. Then she laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. How refreshingly primitive. Lower your weapons. The human has just made himself far more interesting than dead. She turned back to Alara. Bring them all. The queen will want to see this loyalty for herself before she decides who dies first. The Zaytari palace rose from the planet's crystalline surface like a frozen scream. Chen had seen it in briefing materials, elegant architecture that bent light into impossible geometries, but those images hadn't captured the sheer wrongness of the structure. It hurt to look at directly, perspective shifting whenever he tried to focus on specific features. His injured shoulder throbbed in time with his pulse as they were marched through corridors that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Sienna hadn't spoken since the transport. She walked between Chen and Alara, sometimes gripping his good hand, sometimes her mother's. The princess maintained perfect composure, her training evident in every measured step, but Chen caught the micro-expressions that leaked through. Concern for her daughter, confusion about their treatment, fear carefully controlled but present nonetheless. The throne room opened before them without warning, space expanding in ways that made Chen's tactical assessment subroutines fail. The chamber was vast, impossibly vast, its boundaries unclear. At its center stood a dais of living crystal that pulsed with inner light, and upon that dais sat Queen Valkyra. She was larger than her soldiers, her form more complex, as if she contained more angles than should fit in normal space. Purple and blue light warred beneath her translucent surface. When her gaze fell upon their small group, Chen felt the weight of it like physical pressure against his chest. Princess Alara. The queen's voice resonated through the chamber, through Chen's bones. You stand accused of violating our most sacred space. The forbidden sector carries the death penalty for any who trespass. Alara bowed, the gesture precise and controlled. Your Majesty, we received no warning of restricted space. Our navigation systems were updated according to standard diplomatic protocols. If we have given offense, it was unknowing, and we formally request silence. The word didn't echo. It consumed all other sound. I care nothing for your requests. You have seen what must remain hidden. You have brought outsiders into spaces forbidden to all but the sovereignty. There can be no forgiveness for such transgression. Chen's hand drifted toward his sidearm, empty since their capture. His mind raced through scenarios, calculating angles, distances, the positions of the 20 guards stationed throughout the chamber. All the calculations ended the same way. They would die here if the queen willed it, and there was nothing his training or experience could do to prevent it. Sienna moved. The child slipped from between the adults and walked forward, her small steps echoing in the impossible space. Alara's hand shot out too late. Sienna, no! The guards surged forward, weapons raised, but the queen lifted one crystalline hand. Everything stopped. The child kept walking, her face tilted up toward the massive figure on the throne, no fear visible in her expression. Please don't hurt them. Sienna's voice carried clear and high. The captain saved me. He got hurt protecting me. My mama didn't do anything wrong. Please. Chen's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd seen diplomatic negotiations, hostage situations, high-stakes military standoffs. He'd never seen a 4-year-old child walk calmly toward an alien monarch and plead for mercy with such simple directness. Queen Valkyra leaned forward, her massive form shifting as she studied the small human child standing before her throne. Light played across her surface, patterns Chen couldn't interpret. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, lost some of its terrible resonance. You do not fear me, small one? I'm scared. Sienna's hands twisted in her torn dress. But the captain says being scared is okay if you do the right thing anyway. Asking you to be nice is the right thing. The captain. Valkyra's gaze lifted, found Chen in the group behind the child, the one who bleeds for you. Tell me, human soldier, why did you shield this child with your body? Chen stepped forward slowly, aware of every weapon tracking his movement. It's my duty, Your Majesty. I'm sworn to protect Princess Alara and her family. Duty. The queen tasted the word. You took metal through your flesh for duty? I see the damage. Your mobility is compromised. You may never fully heal. This is duty to you? Yes, ma'am. And if I ordered her death now, this child who speaks to me without fear, what would your duty demand? I'd try to stop you. I'd fail, but I'd try. A sound rippled through the chamber, the Zitari equivalent of shocked murmurs. The queen rose from her throne, her form towering as she descended the dais. She moved like flowing water made solid, crossing the distance until she stood directly before Chen. This close, he could see depths within her crystalline structure, layers of light and shadow that suggested complexity beyond his comprehension. You stand before the sovereign of the crystal throne, injured and weaponless, and you threaten me? But I'd die trying. That's not a threat, it's information. Valkyra's form pulsed with purple light. She turned, looking down at Sienna, then back to Chen. Your species confuses me, human. You value ephemeral bonds over self-preservation. You damage yourselves for abstract concepts. You face certain death with calm acceptance rather than sensible retreat. We call it honor, Your Majesty. Honor. She repeated the word as she had duty, testing its weight. I have heard this term. Never understood it until now. The Zitari sovereignty values strength, efficiency, the cold logic of survival, and dominance. We have built an empire on these principles. But watching you shield a child with your flesh, hearing her speak to me without calculation or deception, I begin to see the gap in our understanding. The queen moved back to her throne, but did not sit. Instead, she addressed the assembled court, her voice carrying to every corner of the impossible chamber. Humans confound us with their illogical choices. They form bonds that weaken them tactically but strengthen them in ways we cannot measure. This captain, this warrior, chose permanent injury to preserve one small life. Not his offspring. Not his mate. A child of the species he serves by choice and contract. Princess, you entered the Forbidden Sector. This is truth, yes? Yes, Your Majesty. Alara's voice remained steady. Though we did so unknowingly, we cannot deny... And this human? This Captain Chen? He knew nothing of your mission's true nature? True nature? Alara's micro-expression confirmed what he'd feared. There was more to this mission than he'd been briefed on. Alara's hesitation lasted only a heartbeat. Captain Chen is my security officer. He was informed of our diplomatic purpose. Nothing more. Or because you sought to protect him from knowledge that might endanger him. The princess met the queen's gaze without flinching. The latter, Your Majesty. The fewer people who knew about the message your sovereignty sent through back channels, the safer everyone would be. Or so I believed. The chamber erupted in crystalline voices raised in shock and protest. Chen's mind raced. A secret message? Back-channel communications? The diplomatic mission had been a cover for something else entirely. Alara had used him, used his protection detail, as camouflage for whatever this was. Valkyra raised her hand again. Silence crashed down. You received my communication. My personal request, sent outside official channels. I asked you to come alone, in secret, to discuss matters that could not be entrusted to formal diplomatic channels. Instead, you brought your daughter and a military escort. You endangered the very secrecy I demanded. Alara's composure cracked slightly. Your Majesty, I received your message 3 days before departure. 3 days to arrange transport, to create cover for my absence, to ensure no one suspected the true purpose. I could not leave Sienna behind without raising questions, and Captain Chen... Her voice caught. I trusted him to protect us without knowing the full truth. I was wrong to use him that way. If you must punish someone for this violation, punish me. But he and my daughter are innocent. The mission he'd prepared for, the diplomatic exchange he'd studied and trained to secure, had been smoke and mirrors. Alara had risked everything, including her daughter, for a secret meeting with the Zaytari Queen. The questions multiplied, but this wasn't the time. Not with Sienna still standing exposed before the throne. Not with their lives balanced on whatever decision this alien monarch was calculating. Valkyra descended the dais again, moving towards Sienna. The child looked up, neck craned back to track the towering figure. The queen knelt, bringing her massive crystalline form down until her face, such as it was, aligned with the child's, light refracted between them, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. Small human. You asked me to be kind. Do you understand what kindness means to my people? We have no word for it in our language. The concept exists only as weakness to be exploited. Yet you ask it of me as if it were natural, as if any being might choose it simply because a child requests it. My mama says everyone can choose to be kind, even when it's hard. The queen's form pulsed, light surging through her in waves. Your mother is either very wise or very foolish. I have not yet determined which. She rose, towering again. Captain Chen, approach. Chen moved forward on instinct, his body responding to command authority despite every tactical alarm, screaming warnings. He stopped beside Sienna, his good hand resting on the child's shoulder. The queen loomed above them both, vast and terrible and utterly alien. You shielded this child with your body. You took injury meant for her. In doing so, you created a debt by Zeatari custom. A life preserved through sacrifice must be honored. The one who sacrifices holds claim to the one preserved, until the debt is satisfied or death releases the bond. Your Majesty, I don't claim. You do not understand. By our law, this child belongs to you now. Her life is yours by right of preservation. You may demand service, loyalty, even her death if you choose. This is our way. That's barbaric. The words escaped before Chen could stop them. Every guard in the chamber tensed. Alara's face went white. But Valkyria laughed, that wind chime sound filling the impossible space.
Yes.
It is, just as your willingness to die for strangers seems barbaric to us. We are very different peoples, human. That is why I called your princess here in secret. That is why I violated my own protocols to create this meeting. She turned to address the entire court, her voice carrying absolute authority. The Zetari sovereignty stands at a crossroads. We have achieved dominance through strength and ruthless efficiency. Our empire spans 100 systems. We are feared and respected, but we are also dying. Shocked silence answered her. Chen saw the guards exchange glances, crystalline forms rippling with what might have been confusion or disbelief. Our birth rates decline each generation. Our people grow cold, efficient, perfect in our isolation and control. We have optimized ourselves toward extinction, though we refuse to name it such. I sought allies capable of understanding bonds we have forgotten, if indeed we ever knew them. I sought species that value life over logic, that sacrifice for abstract concepts, that raise their young with gentleness rather than ruthless efficiency testing. Your captain demonstrated exactly what I sought to understand. He chose pain and permanent injury over a tactical retreat that would have preserved his combat effectiveness. This makes no logical sense, yet seeing it, witnessing it directly, I begin to comprehend the strength in such choices. A society that produces individuals willing to sacrifice themselves for others must possess bonds we lack, strength we do not measure. Alara found her voice. Your Majesty, you're proposing an alliance? Cultural exchange. More than that, Princess, I propose transformation. The sovereignty must learn these illogical bonds or face slow extinction. But such learning cannot be commanded. It must be chosen, demonstrated, experienced. That is why I called you here, why I created this crisis, why I demanded to see your response to danger and judgment. Chen's tactical mind caught up. This was a test. The attack on our transport, the accusation of espionage, all of it. The danger was real. My weapons officer had authorization to destroy your vessel if you attempted to flee or fight. But I hoped you would not. I hoped you might demonstrate the very qualities I sought to understand. Valkyria's form shifted, light patterns changing to something that might have been satisfaction. When debris threatened the child, you moved without thought for your own survival. When I threatened her again, you prepared to die uselessly but honorably in her defense. And the child herself, she faced me with simple courage and compassion, asking for kindness as if it were a reasonable request even here, even now. I will grant the child's request, kindness as you call it. You will not die today, but you will remain here as my guests for one full cycle. You will teach my people these bonds you share. You will demonstrate your honor, your duty, your willingness to sacrifice for others. And if you succeed, if we can learn even a fraction of what you possess naturally, perhaps the sovereignty will find a new path forward. Then you return home unharmed, and the sovereignty continues its slow march toward perfection and extinction. I will not force this, Princess. The lesson is meaningless if coerced, but I hope you will choose to stay. I hope your captain will teach mine what it means to shield others with your own body. I hope your daughter will show my people that courage and compassion can coexist. Chen looked down at Sienna, who was looking up at him with those trusting eyes. He thought about the injury spreading fire through his shoulder, about being used as cover for a secret mission, about every regulation he'd just watched get violated. He thought about duty and honor, and the simple fact that when debris had filled the cabin, he hadn't calculated or considered. He'd just moved. "I'll stay," he said quietly. "If the princess agrees, I'll teach what I can." Alara met his eyes, and he saw gratitude there, an apology, and something else he couldn't quite name. "We'll stay, Your Majesty, all of us." Valkyra's form pulsed with brilliant light, purple and blue, and colors Chen had no names for. "Then let us begin. Captain Chen, you need medical attention. Our healers will tend your wounds. Princess Alara, you and I have much to discuss about alliances and the future of our peoples. And small Sienna," the Queen's voice softened, took on harmonics Chen hadn't heard before. "You asked me to be kind. I will try. Though I warn you, I am very new at this, and I may fail often." Sienna smiled, the first genuine smile Chen had seen since the attack. "That's okay. Mama says trying is what matters." Guards moved forward, but this time their crystalline forms held no threat. They gestured toward doorways that opened in the chamber's impossible walls. Chen felt exhaustion crashing over him, blood loss and adrenaline crash combining to make his legs weak. But he stayed upright, stayed alert, because Sienna's hand was still in his, and that trust demanded he remain strong enough to deserve it. As they were led from the throne room, Alara moved close to Chen's good side. Her voice dropped to a whisper meant only for him. "I'm sorry. For using you, for the deception, for all of it. We'll discuss it later, ma'am." His tone remained professional, but something had shifted between them, some line crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. "After they fix my shoulder, and after I figure out whether to be angry about being manipulated or impressed that it worked, I'll accept either response." But Marcus, his first name, spoken for the first time since she'd become his primary assignment. "Thank you. For Sienna. For all of it." Ahead of them, Sienna walked between two ex-Hateri guards who had adjusted their stride to match her small steps. The child was chattering at them, asking questions about their crystalline forms, their ship, whether they had children of their own. The guards' response patterns suggested confusion, but they were listening, attending to her words with something that might have been the beginning of curiosity rather than mere duty. "One cycle," Valkyra had said. Chen had no idea how long that was in Zetari terms. Days, weeks, months, it didn't matter. He'd given his word. More than that, he'd seen something in the Queen's proposition that resonated despite the bizarre circumstances. If an entire species was willing to acknowledge its weakness and seek change, who was he to refuse to help? Even if helping meant staying in this impossible palace, teaching aliens about concepts they'd never valued, all because he'd chosen to shield a child with his own body, and that simple act had broken through millennia of cold efficiency. The medical facility existed in spaces that made Chen's head hurt. Zetari healers moved around him, their forms flowing like liquid crystal, their tools humming with frequencies he felt in his bones. They worked quickly, efficiently, extracting debris from his shoulder, sealing wounds, applying treatments that made his flesh tingle and burn and then suddenly stop hurting at all. He watched, fascinated despite himself, as they repaired damage he'd assumed would be permanent. Within hours, his shoulder responded normally, full range of motion restored. The pain reduced to a dull ache that faded even as he tested his rebuilt muscles. "Efficient," he murmured. The lead healer, a being whose form contained more green than purple, tilted her head in that way that suggested consideration. "You expected less? I expected competence." "I got something beyond that. We excel at repair and optimization. It is what we know, what we do not know." She gestured toward where Sienna sat in the corner, describing her favorite stories to a guard who had apparently been assigned to watch her. "That child speaks to my colleague as if they were equals. She feels no fear, no calculation, only curiosity and openness. We cannot replicate such behavior. We have tried. It rings false when we attempt it, programmed responses rather than genuine connection. You want to learn to be human? Not human. Ourselves, but with capacity for what you possess naturally."
"The Queen believes it possible."
"I am less certain, but I am willing to observe and attempt understanding." Over the following days, Chen learned the rhythm of the Zetari Palace. He taught combat classes to guards who moved with perfect precision but had never considered why they protected what they protected beyond abstract duty to the sovereignty. He explained concepts like loyalty and trust and found himself struggling to define things he'd simply lived without question. He watched Sienna draw pictures for fascinated Zehari who had never created art without specific functional purpose. He saw Alara in deep discussion with Queen Valkyra, the two of them hunched over star charts and diplomatic agreements, building something new from the honest acknowledgement of mutual need. But it was the small moments that mattered most. A guard named Krisha asking Chen why he'd moved to protect Sienna when calculation would have shown the futility of the gesture. A healer requesting to understand why humans felt emotional pain at loss when logic suggested acceptance of inevitable endings. Sienna teaching a group of Zeatari children, pale, small versions of their crystalline elders, how to play games that served no strategic purpose beyond joy and laughter. The cycle turned. Chen's shoulder healed completely. The alliance between humanity and the Zeatari sovereignty took shape in formal documents and careful agreements. But more than that, something shifted in the crystalline beings who had opened themselves to change. They remained efficient, strong, logical, but they began to ask questions that had no tactical answers. They began to create bonds that weakened them individually but strengthened them collectively. On the last day, Valkyra summoned them back to the throne room. She stood at its center, her form somehow different than before, patterns of light moving through her that suggested complexity Chen had learned to read as emotion. "You have given us a gift we did not know we needed," the queen said. "Captain Chen, your willingness to shield a child with your body opened my eyes to strength beyond dominance. Princess Alara, your trust in me, despite every reason to fear, has shown my people that vulnerability can coexist with power, and Sienna..." She knelt again before the small human child. "You asked me to be kind. I have tried. Each day I have tried. It is harder than conquest. Harder than anything I have known. But it may save my people, and for that I am grateful beyond words my language was never designed to express." She rose, addressing them all. "The sovereignty and humanity will forge new bonds today. Alliance, yes, but more than that. Partnership based not on shared enemies, but on shared values we are only beginning to understand. We will learn from you, you will learn from us. Together, perhaps both our peoples will be stronger than either could be alone." Chen felt Sienna's hand slip into his, small and warm and trusting. He looked down at her, this child who had walked into danger with simple courage, who had asked an alien queen for kindness and somehow received it. Then he looked at Alara, seeing not just his princess, but a woman who had risked everything on the belief that enemies could become allies if someone was brave enough to reach across the gap. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "I have one question. When you fired on our transport, when you endangered us all to create this test, what would you have done if I hadn't moved to protect Sienna? What if I'd calculated the odds and chosen self-preservation? Then I would have allowed you to return home unharmed, and I would have known that the qualities I sought did not exist as I'd hoped. The sovereignty would have continued its path toward extinction, and I would have accepted that fate as inevitable. Your choice, Captain, was the fulcrum upon which the future of my entire species balanced. I am grateful you chose as you did." The weight of that statement settled over Chen like physical pressure. A split-second decision, instinct and training combining, in the moment debris had filled the cabin, and the fate of an entire alien civilization had hung on that choice. He'd never calculated the odds. He'd just moved, just wrapped himself around a small body and taken the pain meant for her. Duty, honor, simple human decency, he still couldn't articulate exactly why. But looking at Valkyra's form, at the assembled Zeatari court, at the changes he'd witnessed over their time here, he understood that sometimes the most important choices were the ones you made without thinking, guided by values deeper than calculation. "We should go home now," Sienna said quietly. "But can we come back and visit? I like it here." Valkyra's crystalline form resonated with sound that might have been laughter or might have been something the Zeatari were only now learning to express. "You will always be welcome in the sovereignty, small one. You and your mother and your captain who shields you with his body. Return whenever you wish. Teach us more about kindness. We have much yet to learn." The transport that carried them home was new, pristine, equipped with technology that made their original vessel look primitive. A gift from the sovereignty, Valkyra had explained, along with formal guarantees of safe passage through any Zeatari space. Chen piloted it himself, his shoulder responding perfectly to the controls, no trace remaining of the injury that had started everything. Sienna slept in the passenger cabin, exhausted from tearful goodbyes to the Zeatari children she'd befriended. Alara sat in the co-pilot's seat, watching stars stream past the viewport. Neither of them spoke for a long time, the silence comfortable rather than tense. Finally, Alara broke it. I used you, manipulated you, put you and my daughter in danger based on a gamble that an alien queen's secret message was genuine rather than a trap. You have every right to resign your position when we return. Chen kept his eyes on the navigation display. Do you plan to accept future secret messages from alien monarchs? Probably not, though I'm beginning to think my judgment on such matters may be questionable. Then I'll stay. Someone needs to keep you and Sienna alive despite your decision-making skills. She laughed, the sound surprising them both. Marcus, I'm serious. What I did was wrong. I should have trusted you with the truth. Maybe. He glanced at her, meeting her eyes for a moment before returning to the controls. But if you had, I might have advised against the mission. Might have calculated the risks and recommended we refuse Valkyra's invitation. We'd have lost the opportunity to change the course of two civilizations. Sometimes the wrong decision turns out to be exactly right. Is that military wisdom or philosophical flexibility? That's me trying to make sense of the fact that I got stabbed through the shoulder and somehow triggered an interspecies alliance that might last centuries. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it yet. When you figure it out, let me know. Alara leaned back in her seat. I'll be processing this for years. Maybe decades. We walked into what should have been a death trap and walked out having helped an entire species rediscover concepts they'd forgot. It doesn't feel real. It was real enough when that debris was flying. Chen's hand unconsciously moved to his shoulder, feeling the absence of pain where agony should have been. Sienna trusts me now. Really trusts me. I felt it when she grabbed my hand in the throne room. That's real. That's worth all of it. She's always trusted you, Marcus. But yes, it's different now. You're not just her security officer anymore. You're the one who shielded her with your body. That means something, creates a bond that goes beyond duty or assignment. I saw it in how she looks at you now. The navigation system chimed, indicating they were approaching human space. Home territory, familiar and safe, so different from the impossible geometries of the Zetahari Palace. Chen made the necessary course adjustments, his hands steady on the controls, his mind already shifting to the debriefings and reports and explanations that would consume the next weeks. But underneath all that professional consideration ran a current of something else. Satisfaction, maybe. Or simply the quiet certainty that when crisis had come, when the moment had demanded choice, he'd chosen correctly without needing to calculate the odds. Behind him, Sienna stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about kindness and crystalline friends. Chen smiled despite himself. The child had walked up to an alien queen and asked for mercy with the simple confidence that any being might choose compassion if only someone requested it, and somehow, impossibly, she'd been right. That was worth remembering, worth protecting, worth shielding with his body if the situation ever demanded it again. Thank you, Marcus. Alara's voice was soft, almost lost beneath the hum of the engines. For everything. For staying even though I didn't deserve your loyalty. For teaching the Zetahari what it means to be human at our best. Just doing my job, ma'am.
No, you went far beyond your...
You always do. That's why you're dangerous to have around. Dangerous? You set impossible standards. You set impossible standards as well. Make the rest of us look bad by comparison. How am I supposed to maintain proper royal dignity when my security officer keeps demonstrating that true nobility has nothing to do with bloodlines and everything to do with choices made in crisis? But she was smiling as she said it, warmth in her voice that suggested friendship, rather than merely professional respect. Chen returned his attention to the viewport, to the stars growing familiar as they approached home. Somewhere behind them, the Zetahari's sovereignty was changing, learning, evolving beyond the cold efficiency that had defined them for millennia. All because he'd moved without thinking when debris had threatened a child. All because Sienna had asked for kindness with simple faith that kindness was possible. All because Alara had gambled everything on the hope that enemies might become allies if someone was brave enough to try. The transport slipped into human space, communication channels lighting up with standard greeting protocols and clearance requests. Normal procedures, normal responsibilities, the ordinary world rushing back after days of impossible palaces and alien queens. But Chen knew, watching Sienna sleep and feeling the easy silence between himself and Alara, that nothing would be quite ordinary again. They had changed something fundamental in the galaxy, and the galaxy in turn had changed something fundamental in them. Home, Alara said quietly, watching their planet grow larger in the viewport. Ready for the debriefings? Ready for whatever comes next, Chen replied. As long as we face it together. She reached out, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder. The one that had taken metal meant for her daughter. The one that had healed but would always carry the memory of that choice. No words passed between them. None were needed. They had survived together, learned together, helped reshape the future together. Whatever came next, they would face it with the same courage and trust that had carried them through impossible circumstances. Behind them, Sienna woke fully, sitting up and pressing her face to the viewport to watch home approach. "Are we there yet?" "Almost," Chen answered. "Almost there." And in that moment, with home ahead and infinity behind, he knew with absolute certainty that he'd made the right choice. Every time, without question, without calculation. Just duty and honor and the simple human truth that some things mattered more than survival, more than logic, more than any calculation could measure. He'd shield that child again if necessary. He'd face alien queens and impossible tests and whatever other challenges the universe decided to throw at them. Because that's what humans did. They protected each other. They made impossible choices and somehow made them work. They asked for kindness and sometimes, miraculously, they received it. And when the moment demanded sacrifice, they moved without thinking, guided by values deeper than reason, stronger than fear, more enduring than any empire built on cold efficiency alone. The transport touched down on familiar ground, and Chen allowed himself a small smile. They were home. They were safe. And the galaxy was a little bit different than it had been before, maybe even a little bit better. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.